Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2 and today I'm going to be giving you guys some helpful tips on how to prepare for the upcoming update that I think is probably going to come out in at least 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks if we're lucky, but could even be a month from now. I'm not even entirely sure when it's going to come out, but I'm going to be giving you guys some tips on the update that will come out and how to prepare for it. I know that a lot of people are kind of demotivated and not really playing at the moment because they're pretty burnt out and just don't see like a reason to actually be playing. And I completely understand that. I am actually kind of feeling it similar, but so I figured it would be nice to make a video kind of going over a few things that you guys could do in preparation just to give you something to do. And I mean, it is helpful information nonetheless. So getting right into it, I guess. I'm going to try to make this a quick video, but we'll see what happens. So as I'm sure you guys are aware, the recalibration station is actually going to be changing in the new update. For those of you that don't know, the way that it works currently, as I'm sure you do know, is things get capped. If I try to recalibrate something, there's a maximum at which I'm able to do that, right? It's, as you can see right here, it says capped to 4,000, whatever. In the new update, capping still is a thing, but reaching that cap is almost impossible, to be honest. I was on the PTS and there was not a single item that I reached the cap on, meaning that on this mask here, for example, instead of being capped at 3k health, I would probably be able to roll it to, on a current piece of gear anyway, around like 11k health because it's not going to be capped at all. Like I said, though, there is still a cap. It's just almost impossible to reach. So I'm basically going to be referring to it as no cap. We know that this change is going to go through pretty much 100%. They explained it on the PT or on the state of the game and everything, and they were pretty adamant about putting this through to the live game. So I don't have any concerns that this isn't actually going to happen. Personally, I'm not a big fan of it. Whatever, I might talk about that in a later video. But in terms of how to actually make good use of this, the reason that this is important information is because you can actually farm for gear now that will be helpful in the later update. I know that a lot of people think that farming for gear right now is kind of useless because everything is just going to get nerfed and maybe some things aren't going to retroactively get changed. But regardless, with that recalibration change going through, this opens up a lot of opportunity, not only for builds, but meaning that there's a lot of stuff that you can farm for in preparation. So for example, since I can just recalibrate anything to a max roll, that means that I would want to have a lot of max rolls lying around, right? So let's say that on my pet shop chest piece, let's say I wanted to roll to a really high headshot roll, right? In order to actually do that, I would probably need a chest piece in my stash that has a really high headshot roll. I actually have like 2 other characters that are pretty much just full of Alps gear. The reason is because Alps gear is going to be what's rolling really high in terms of the attributes, because it always rolls like 2 attributes, so these are going to be very high rolls. So I have a whole nother character, which is a whole bunch of Alps stuff, which is just going to be very high rolls, so that when I need to, I can roll stuff over when the update goes live, and I can just roll to max attribute rolls. So not only do you want to hoard pretty much any piece of gear that is going to have a very high attribute roll here. I think I have a few in my stash here. So for example, I'd be hoarding something like this chest piece with 25k health because that's around the max roll that you can get as of right now or anyway. Or like a backpack with 10% crit, that's really high. Stuff like that. A chest piece with 18% crit, that's actually the highest I've seen. That's insane. So I'm just hoarding stuff like this. I think that's really important to do, but besides doing that, because of the way the system works, this is pretty much going to promote pieces of gear where you have one of these rolls being very high and then one of them being very low. This chest piece is actually a pretty good example as well. So let's say that I actually wanted to use this chest piece. I would want it to roll like this, where one attribute is very high, being the high crit chance, and then another one is low, being the health. The reason that I would want it to roll like this is because I'm gaining full benefit from one of the other attributes, and then let's say I wanted health, all I'd have to do is just roll a very high health roll onto this being like 25k from the other chest piece, because there's pretty much no cap there. As you can see, this is actually pretty much just the inverse of this one. So because of this, I could literally just be like, oh, well, I get best of both worlds, right? I get all the crit and I get all the health in the world. So I'd definitely be looking out for pieces of gear that have one attribute at a very low roll and then one attribute at a very high roll. Here's another example. This isn't great, but it's still a decent example. My weapon damage isn't too high here, but my armor is pretty good here. So I definitely keep this. As of right now, it's not super good because I'd probably want way more weapon damage, but when the update comes out, I could just have a ton of armor and then boom, roll the weapon damage like 13% or whatever the max would be. Because of the way that this works, in order to get full value out of gear, you're pretty much always going to be wanting to roll the attributes, right? That you're never going to be in a scenario where rolling the talents is going to make sense, because with there not being a cap on recalibrating, I always am going to want to have pieces of gear where I can get 2 attributes at the least with close to maximum potential, right? Because it's never going to drop on the ground with super high rolls. This is never going to drop with 15k armor and 10% weapon damage. Or this chest piece is never going to drop with 25k health and 18% crit chance, right? It's always going to be one or the other, because that's a stat budget, or that's the budget of the gear when that gear drops on the ground. But then when you recalibrate it, it's adding extra budget. So what this means is that you're never going to want a piece of gear where you're going to have to recalibrate the talent. So with this chest piece, right, I don't care about restorative. This is a very garbage talent. I would never want to use this, right? So I am never going to personally actually roll this chest piece from health to anything else, because then that means that I'm going to be stuck with a talent that is in most cases going to be useless, right? So this chest piece is pretty much only going to be here just so that I can roll it. Same thing with like this backpack, right? If I wanted crit for some reason, I could use this backpack. It'd be great because it's a lot of crit, could roll the armor really high, but guess what? I'm stuck with these really bad talents, right? So you pretty much always only want to be hoarding gear that is going to have good talents on it that roll by default, so that you can always roll the attributes to as high as you want. This is going to make farming for min-max gear builds, stuff like that, way more difficult than it is currently, but it is going to make you much stronger in the long term. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of it because I think to an extent it kills build diversity. But anyways, yeah, that's one thing to definitely be keeping in mind. If you're playing right now, I would definitely recommend farming for gear, trying to get gear with very high attribute rolls, either so that you can roll it or so that you can keep it when the patch goes live and use it. So yeah, definitely want to be on the lookout for pieces of gear that roll like this, where it just has, you know, the talents on it that you want, and then maybe I don't really, you know, the armor isn't too good, the health isn't too good, but I could roll the crit damage to at least max value, right? You always want to be making sure to do that. Other than that, there isn't really a whole bunch of stuff to do in preparation. I would say because you're going to be recalibrating a lot, like the second the update goes live. By the way, I know that a lot of people are going to say that this gear isn't going to be valid once the update goes live, because Gearscore 515 is going to come out. The difference between 500 and 515 is going to be such a low percentile that I don't even think you're going to notice it from the base rolls of the gear. Maybe on weapons you'll see a little bit of a discrepancy there, but in terms of actual gear rolls, I don't think there's going to be that big of a difference, so I still think it's definitely worth hoarding a whole bunch of gear. But regardless, beyond that, since you're going to be recalibrating a lot, try to get maxed out on all of your materials here. As you can see, I have pretty much 400 of everything, and I have a lot of polycarbonate as well. Polycarbonate is probably the hardest thing to get. You can get a lot of these from doing, you know, killing hyenas and stuff like that. One quick tip, when you get polycarbonate, I would actually recommend going over to the crafting station here and then crafting some of these mods, because they're pretty hard to get just from farming. But if you craft a lot of them, you can make a lot of good ones, and these are actually going to be even better when the update goes live. So if you don't have much to do, I think it would be worth to farm these out and just keep crafting a whole bunch of them. As for me, I know personally I'm missing a lot of very high tier, high-end mods that I could be using. Let me give you an example here. So for like LMG, I have one that gives 1% weapon damage, 1% or 4% LMG damage, and 1% damage to armor. This is a pretty strong mod here, but I don't have some of these for rifle or for assault rifle and stuff like that. And these are actually going to be getting buffed when the update goes live. And this is actually a 451. So if I had a 481, it could be way better. Like this one's actually insane. Look, 5% weapon damage, 0.5%, and 6% rifle damage, and the SMG damage could be damage to armor instead. This one is also insane. And these are going to be getting buffed when the update goes live again, so I would definitely make sure to try to farm for these. Crafting them right now, they will get retroactively changed, so I definitely think that it's worth making them. You can do the same with protocol mods. So yeah, it's a good tip. Other than that, there really isn't all that much more to say. I guess it would be probably worth hoarding normal credits as well and just making sure to sell stuff. But beyond that, there isn't really all that much to do. I would say kind of just mess around with the build that you have right now. See what you like, figure out what gun you want to use when the update goes live, so that when it goes live, you're not completely lost and you actually have some gear that you can work with. But I definitely think the biggest takeaway is just hoard as much stuff as humanly possible, so that when the update goes live, you are more than prepared. Another thing you could do in the meantime is maybe make like a second character or something, just so you have more inventory space so that you can hoard even more stuff. It's also nice to have a second character just in case that there's ever an activity in the game where there's like a weekly reward limit where you can only do it on one character. Maybe you could hop onto a second character and do it as well. That'd be helpful, but other than that, there really isn't a ton of stuff to do. Some people are farming for generic mods at the moment. I'm not really sure whether or not it's worth doing that, because those are going to be getting nerfed. We don't know how much they're getting nerfed by though. Even if they put the values down really low, I still think they could be strong. So it really depends on how much they end up nerfing them in total, I guess. So if you want to farm for those, go for it. I mean, like I said, you still got 3 weeks until the update comes out. At least that's my assumption. So that's plenty of time to go farm for these. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I wanted to go over some more tips, but honestly, there really isn't anything else to go over. I think the main takeaway is just hoarding as much gear as possible for the recalibration change. I don't think a lot of people really completely understood how that worked or even knew that it was happening, so figured it was worth mentioning at least. Hopefully you guys got some helpful information from this. If you did enjoy the video, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe for videos similar to this one, and follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Nick2, or follow me on Twitter at Nick2YT. Alright, I'll see you guys later. Peace out.